As adults even, there's times where in order to belong, in order to fit in, we feel like sometimes we have to change. We have to change who we are. We have to change. And so we chase belonging in clubs or in gyms or in online communities or whatever it may be, friend groups, and we chase this belonging. Social media definitely has exemplified or blown this up even out of proportion, the desire to connect. The problem is that sometimes in our desire to connect and belong and sometimes in how we shape and change who we are, we find ourselves even more lonely and more isolated and more lacking in belonging than when we started. And there's this tension that we have. And why do we feel that? Why do we feel so strongly that we need to belong, that we need to have a community? I believe it's because God put it inside of us. Like that's something that God wove into the fabric when he created us, is this need and this desire to belong. And unfortunately, that God-given need often gets turned, often gets misconstrued, often leads us down paths where we try to fit into other places and to places we were never supposed to belong to, and that leaves us feeling fragile, right? We've all experienced this in our lives, right? Friends that come and go, family or people that we thought would always be with us leave. We know what the ache of this feeling like at times being on the outside looking in. And yet God it invites us to something else. And the good news of the gospel is that in Christ, God is inviting us home. God is inviting us to this word belong. And here's the good news, that in Christ, in Jesus, right? Through what Jesus did, through what we celebrated in communion, what we talked about in communion, there's been an invitation issued to you to have that belonging restored. That God can restore what sin broke, and that belonging to God is not about cleaning yourself up first. It's about coming to God in his grace and accepting the gift of belonging to him. It's receiving what God in Christ Jesus has already done for you. Notice what John says, that all who did receive him, all who did receive God, that's a language of adoption, right? And we think about adoption, even in our world today, like when a child's adopted, it's not because they earned it. Right? It's not because they had an outstanding resume. It's because they were chosen and they were loved. And they were invited into a family. And that's what God has done for you in Jesus. So friends, I want to invite you to begin thinking today, how is it that God is inviting me to press more into belonging here, to press more into family life here, right? That not only I belong to Jesus through grace, and that I belong to a family, and just like our regular families and our physical families, just like a team, we belong to each other. And so that means that we're going to be present, and we're going to help, and we're going to serve, and we're going to open up our lives, and we're going to eat meals together, and that we're just going to engage in family life. One pastor said it like this, that the primary activity of the church is one-anothering one another. If you look through the New Testament, the primary activity of the church is one-anothering one another, right? There's so many ways that we have opportunities to care for one another, to speak life into one another, to share life together, to carry each other's burdens. What we're saying today is one of our core values is going to be this, that people belong. That you belong here, and we're committing to, when people walk into the building, is that we greet them as though they belong here. Because they do. Because we believe that in Jesus Christ, God's invited every person to belong to him. I think we all agree with that, right? Like we believe that in Jesus, like God's inviting every person back to himself. So if people belong to God, they get the chance to belong here too. And that for many of you, maybe the takeaway today is just live out of a place of belonging. Like embrace what God has done for you fully and live out of that space of belonging. You don't have to prove yourself because God's invitation is clear. You are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are members of the household of God. You belong to Him. And when we belong to Jesus, we finally find a place of home. And that's what we want.